Welcome, everyone. Glad the mix-up of dates didn't prevent us from having a good-sized crowd. This evening is intended to keep the memorial in Memorial Day. Memorial Day is a solemn, sacred day of remembrance. Veterans Day is for those who return from war. Armed Forces Day is for those currently serving. Memorial Day is for those who didn't return. We fly the flag at half-staff at until noon on Memorial Day because those nearly 1.2 million American men and women gave their lives in defense of our freedom. Those lives were lost in wars and conflicts stretching from our Revolutionary War more than 2 centuries ago through the recent war against terrorists in Afghanistan to the Second Iraqi War and the follow-up. So, on Memorial Day, we do not honor war. We do not honor war. Rather, we recall with respect the fallen heroes of our nation who fought to create and preserve our American heritage of liberty and justice for all our citizens. Their lives were given to protect ours, and now they rest in honored graves around the world, from the white crosses at Normandy and the sunken hulk of the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor to the tomb of the unknowns at Arlington National Cemetery. Some of them rest unburied in watery graves beneath the oceans, on remote mountaintops in Korea, and in the jungles of Vietnam. We must never forget our fallen comrades in arms. They are forever honored and forever mourned. The sacrifice these men and women made is meaningless without our remembrance of it. If those who remember fail to teach the younger generation and fail to demonstrate in their lives that they remember and why they remember, America will pass away. Already, America's World War II and Korean War veterans have mostly made their last roll call and are disappearing from society's landscape. There are fewer and fewer standard bearers left to carry the torch of remembrance. So let's take a moment to honor those among us who are veterans. I'll ask you to stand if you are able. World War II veterans. Korean War. Watch Renee Gagnon when I call Vietnam. He hasn't sat down yet. Vietnam. Operation Desert Storm. That was Gulf War I. Operation Enduring Freedom. Operation Iraqi Freedom. Afghanistan. Veterans who served in other conflicts. Bosnia. And veterans who served in peacetime. We honor all who wore the uniform of our armed forces. So God bless all of us and those who are here in spirit. May this evening's activities deepen our reverence for our fallen soldiers. Before we read the honor roll of names, I want to recite a Memorial Day poem written by Cadet Major Kelly Strong when he was a junior at the Air Force Academy. It's entitled, "Freedom is Not Free." I watched the flag pass by one day. It fluttered in the breeze. A young Marine saluted it, and then he stood at ease. I looked at him in uniform, so young, so tall, so proud. With hair cut square and eyes alert, he'd stand out in any crowd. I thought how many men like him had fallen through the years. How many died on foreign soil. How many mothers' tears. How many pilots' planes shot down. How many died at sea. How many foxholes were soldiers' graves. No, freedom is not free. I heard the sound of taps one night when everything was still. I heard the bugler play and felt a sudden chill. I wondered just how many times that taps had meant amen when a flag had draped the coffin of a brother or a friend. I thought of all the children, of the mothers and the wives, of fathers, sons, and husbands with their interrupted lives. I thought about a graveyard at the bottom of the sea, of unmarked graves in Arlington. No, freedom is not free. Now, Leslie will read the honor roll of names, assisted by Assistant Chaplain Ralph Bowman.
Does everyone have the programs? So on the left part are all people that are either family members or members, the people known that we've added to the list on the left. And then the names that we read tonight are former AAFRC members who have now passed. Brenda Anderson, Russell Burrill, Howard Bodine, John Bonacore, Frank Camera, Frank Castiglione, Francis A. Simonera, John J. Connor, Robert Conrad, Lieutenant William Cotner, James Delahunt, James Doherty, John W. Dunn, Ted Edgerton, James Fontana, Arthur Frechette, Murray Friedman, William Gelati, Roy Gelke, Fitch Guilford, Frank Hancock, Willard Bud Hartshorn, Edward Hooger, Harvey Hubble IV, Ned Humphreys, Robert W. Kaiser, Andrew Cappy Jr., Kevin J. Kelly, Ed Knowlton, Grigor Kostuk, Casimir Kowalski, Anthony Lambeau, Robert Lampron, Lou Landino, Edward Lapointe, Frank LaSure, Joseph Lombardo, Norm McConey, Robert Marinero, Joseph McDermott, Jack McFarland, Judd Moore, Donald Nell, William Noah, Doris Nielsen, Dave Penniman, James Kors, Howard Ray, Melvin W. Rice, Stanford Robertson, Harold Rochette, Donald Rowland, Art Ruggiero, Anthony Santoro, Edward Schultz, Daniel Seiss, Bertel Stigberg, Murray Stillman, John M. Tabak, Donald Tall, Roy E. Tripp, and James Walsh.
Now, Ed, in St. Martin,
yes.
will you please lead us in America the Beautiful? What? Hold it a second, Ed. Go ahead, Ed.
Oh, beautiful, for skies, for
sea to shining sea.
In a moment, we'll conclude our ceremony, but before benediction and taps, I want to thank all of you for helping to keep the memorial in Memorial Day. When we have the parade on Sunday, it's much more festive with a lot of hoopla, but we should never forget that this is not a holiday, but a holy day, sacred and solemn, remembering those who gave their lives. President Reagan told us why we have Memorial Day with these words. He said, "Most of those who died in defense of our country were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. They gave up their chances to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up everything. They gave up everything for their country and for us. All we can do is remember." Now I ask you to join me in a prayer. No need to rise. Almighty God, creator of the universe, you are the author of our being. You have dominion over life and death. We thank you for the lives of those brave men and women whom we have named tonight. They have joined your great spirit army, whose footfalls leave no sound. When they were with us here on earth, they helped to preserve this nation against tyranny and godlessness. We make our earnest prayer that you will continue to keep the United States in your holy protection, and that you will incline the hearts of all citizens to cultivate a spirit of righteousness, good citizenship, and brotherly affection for one another and for our fellow citizens across the land. Keep us ever mindful of our duty to you and to our country, and extend the spirit of America around the world, not as a political monopoly or as a commercial empire, but as a benevolent society which shows forth to all humanity that you are the source of our freedom, our sovereignty, our equality, our rights, our justice, our human dignity, and all other blessings of liberty. Amen.
Amen.
Assistant Chaplain, late taps. I'll turn the microphone over to Leslie.
So to conclude today's program, we thought it would be nice to have Ralph Rowland, who is our assistant chaplain, and also just came back from his honor flight. And for those of you who don't know about that, it's World War II veterans that are invited, and they fill out a form, an application, and get invited down for a day where they're honored with quite the experience. And Ralph is going to tell us about his. I know, Alex, you've been on that.
Yeah.
And
People donate $300, donate to each one that goes on a plane. We had 41 people in a wheelchair in a super duper plane that just crashed over in France. And I think we had about 80 guys at one time. They have buses there, and motorcycles in front, and take it back, all the memorials. But here's the best part.
So you went a couple years ago, right?
Yeah.
Right,
The best
so,
part is that the people applaud when you get off the plane. And where is that colonel that he was up there? That's it. Her father was one of them that started it. It's the biggest thing I've seen.
so Ralph just came back Saturday. He was escorted by Don.
This was an extraordinary experience. The idea is that these groups, and this particular one that invited me to go to Washington for what they call an honor flight. I might digress just a moment to say that when John White first told me about it, he said, "Do you know what an honor flight is?" And I said, "Well, I suppose it's when airplanes fly over some sort of an event." And he said, "No, that's a flyover. That's not an honor flight." An honor flight is when they take you on the trip to be honored. This particular group was the Hudson Valley Honor Flight, and they're based over in Rockland County. But most of the folks that were in this particular group were from Westchester County, the largest contingent, but they were from other parts of the area, several from Connecticut and some from Long Island, New Jersey, New York, whatever. It began, and Don was my guardian. Don took me over the week before the honor flight to the Westchester Community College, where we had a sort of a meet and greet session, and we got to hear about what the program was going to be like for the honor flight day itself, and the flight and visit to Washington. And we got to meet some of the people that were going on it, and also the staff and some of the volunteers that were involved. And I was particularly pleased, for some reason completely unknown to me. They asked me to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, which I was very honored to do at that event. On the day of the flight, which was a long day, by the way, Don and I left Cheshire at 4:45 in the morning and got back at 11 o'clock at night, so it was a long day. But when we got to the airport in White Plains, there was a group to meet us there, and of course they had sign-in, check-in, coffee, donuts, and all that sort of thing, but they were very welcoming, and they gave each of us a T-shirt with the emblem of the honor flight on it, and that was so that we could reasonably well be identified when we were in Washington, so we partly wouldn't get lost, and so that they could find us to get back on the bus when it was the right time. So we each wore one of those. They put us, because we couldn't go through the usual security at the airport, and it didn't have to, we went over to the other side of the airport, to the commercial side, where the airplane was waiting for us. But to get there, it's a long circuitous trip, and we went in several buses. It's about a 20-mile trip around through Purchase and Ride to get over to the other side of the airport. But we were accompanied by 100 motorcycles. It was a fantastic phalanx of escort that went with us all the way around to the other side. Now, when we got to the other side of the airport, the airplane itself was waiting for us. It was an airplane that had been chartered from American Airlines, a beautiful airplane, by the way, waiting outside a very large hangar, and this hangar was filled with people, and with an honor guard, local and county officials, and hundreds of people that were seeing their family members and friends off on the trip. So there were speeches by the county executive and others that welcomed us to that part of it, and wished us well on the trip, and so forth and so on. the hangar was filled with people. It was another welcoming event. When we got on the plane, before we left, before we got out onto the runway, there were 2 fire engines from the local fire department with water cannons firing up water up over the airplane as we taxied off onto the runway. And the plane was pretty well washed on the way. But it was a relatively short flight to Washington. We went to Reagan National, came in there, and there was a group of people to greet us there as well. But they put us on 4 buses. There were tour-type buses, very nice, very comfortable buses. I might mention that the airplane itself was particularly comfortable, one of the most comfortable airplanes that I've ever flown on. And I haven't been flying much lately, but I used to quite a bit. But anyway, they had a box lunch for us on the buses. There were 4 buses. Ours, they're identified as 1 red, 1 white, 1 blue, and 1 gold. And ours was the first one, the red bus, and so we went off. We had a box lunch on that, and the first stop was the World War II Memorial. Now, I hadn't seen that before. I'd seen the Vietnam Memorial before, but I hadn't seen either the World War II Memorial or the Korean War Memorial. And so the first stop was the World War II Memorial, and it was very, very impressive to me. I don't know how many of you may have been there and have seen it, but if you have, I'm sure that you share my opinion that it's very well done, magnificent, it really is an all-encompassing effect, I think, in that half of it is devoted to the European theater and half of it devoted to the Asiatic theater, and it has a big pool and fountain in the middle and so forth, and the various battles in each theater are inscribed in stone at various places, and all of the states of the Union of 48 at that time are inscribed in pillars around the memorial, so that there were places where you could be reminiscent of your state or your battle or those of your some of your colleagues and family members. For example, I was in the Navy in the Seabees, and the battles that I was in were primarily New Guinea and Okinawa, but I also stopped at the Po Valley inscription because my brother-in-law was in the 10th Mountain Division, and he was hurt in the battle of Po Valley, or the campaign, I should say. Anyway, it was very impressive. And then we went from that to the Korean War Memorial, and I found that to be very impressive indeed. As those of you who have seen it know, it's a series of statues showing men on patrol, and it's very well done. Each statue is about 8 feet high, made of stainless steel, very carefully detailed, and really show the impression of somebody that's really out on a dangerous patrol. And those statues, incidentally, were also cast in the Hudson Valley over in Beacon, New York, which incidentally happens to be one of the places which is part of my family heritage, my family roots. So I was interested in that part of it as well. And then we went once more to the Vietnam Memorial, which of course is always impressive. I think to anybody that ever has visited, it has a certain catch of its own. It's certainly something that you could hardly fail to be impressed with all of those thousands and thousands of names that are etched into the black stone wall. So then we went from there to the Lincoln Memorial, where we had a group photograph taken in front of the Lincoln Memorial. After that, back on the buses, I should say, and we went to Arlington National Cemetery, and we were there in time for the changing of the guard at the amphitheater. Now, Don can tell you more about that because he went over to see the actual changing. I stayed on the bus at that point because it began to rain, it was very windy, and it was quite cold suddenly, and I was a little bit anxious that I might not be able to maintain my footing on the slippery pavement, so I didn't go to the actual changing. But what happened, for those of us that stayed on the bus had to move because to make way for other buses that were coming in for other tours. And in doing so, they traveled all around the cemetery. And we got an opportunity to see most of Arlington and to be absolutely impressed, I think, by the thousands and thousands of graves that are there, and to see the beauty of the place itself. So that while we missed one aspect of it, we saw another that was not really on the program. From that, excuse me, from that we went to a hotel, a dining room where we had a really very nice dinner and a chance to socialize with some of the other folks that were with us, get to talk with them, and they find some common ground, and as you always do when you get to talk with other veterans, you find that even if you were in New Guinea and they were in Normandy, you still have something in common with them. So very much in common with them. It's a sort of a national, I don't know, brotherhood of sorts. And I enjoyed that part of it as well, and the food was good too. So eventually we got back on a plane, and we headed back to Westchester County, or White Plains. And as a complete surprise, they conducted what they called mail call on the plane on the way back. And they provided each one of the veterans, there were about 60 veterans, by the way, and of course each one had somebody looking after them as well. So there was a pretty large group, but for each of the 60 veterans, there was an envelope full of letters that were composed by family members, friends, local school children, other folks that many of them in the local area, just thanking us for what we had done. And frankly, that was one of the most impressive parts of the whole event, to receive those letters. I can't tell you how emotional it made me feel. And of course, one of them was from Leslie, and two of them was from the other ladies of our own group here, and I'm very thankful for your thoughtfulness in providing those. But I also got some from my grandchildren and from my own children and so forth, and from children of the neighborhood over in Westchester County. They were all very delightful. But that wasn't the end of it either. We got back to White Plains, to the airport, and when we came into the reception area, there were literally hundreds of people there. There were, I suppose, a lot of them were family members of folks in that particular area, but there were also members of the police, fire department, other members of the military, and so forth, all to welcome us back to the airport and to White Plains. So, and coming in, they made us feel. The whole idea was to make us feel like celebrities, and really we did. You wondered, after all these years, what have I done to deserve this? Why are you doing this? Well, I felt that in a way, the main thing that I had managed to do was live. And all of the other folks that had passed on in the past that deserved all of this praise, especially the ones that gave up their lives in the war, they never got anything like this. Those of us that just happened to survive for a long time and are still around to talk about it after all these years, were able to do that. So I have to tell you that it was a tremendous experience, and it brought back to me, I couldn't help but think. At the end of World War II, I was in Okinawa when the war ended, and the trip home started late October 1945, and it took a couple of weeks to get to California by ship. And as we came into San Diego in sometime early November in 1945, I remember going around the Point Loma, and there was a giant billboard that said, "Welcome home, well done." And then when we got into the harbor, tied up at the Navy Pier, got off the ship, and then there was a lot of volunteer folks from the San Diego community, mostly women, and they had sandwiches and donuts and coffee and all that sort of thing, that, you know, just to try to make it a welcoming home ceremony. And I remembered that, those long ago dim memories all came back to me as we came into the airport in White Plains the other night. It just was a sort of I don't know what you could say, but it was a very emotional feeling, but it was one that I greatly and sincerely appreciate, and I feel that I was doing it for a lot of people that couldn't be here. Thanks a lot, folks.
A year ago, on a Thursday morning, I get a phone call. And it says, "Are you still interested in the trip to Washington?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." And I says, "When is it?" And she says, "Saturday." And I says, "Which Saturday?" She says, "This one." So I had 2 days to do it. Anyway, it was phenomenal. And I think the one I went to, there were 80 of us on the plane. Plus, we each had, I called him a handler, we each had a person that helped us. So it was 160 on the plane. And of the 80, they gave us a count. The average age was 92 of the 80. And there were only 16 from Korean veterans, the rest were World War II. There were 2 ladies, both of them had been nurses. One was from World War II, and she did very well, and one was from the Korean War. So we had 2 ladies, and the rest were all men. We get to Bradley, the plane is delayed. We get out onto the field, and the Bradley fire engines are throwing water on the plane as it's coming, as it's leaving. We get to Washington, D.C., and we land, and they put us in 2 or 4 abreast, like you're marching back in the Army, you know. And they marched us through the entrance into the airport, and they had a band there. So we had to sit and wait for a while until I got everybody organized, and the band was playing music, and it was a brass band. It was really good, young people, and they were really good, and they were having a good time, and we were too. They lined us up again, and we went out towards the place where the buses were stored, and there was a gentleman sitting there with his back to us. And it was, I'm trying to think of his name now. It was a senator. He's 92 years old.
Bob Dole.
Dole.
Bob Dole.
And each of us walked up beside of him. He was talking to the fellow on the left, and I heard the fellow say what he did what he did in the Army. And there was a young lady who went on the whole trip from the television station, and she had her announcing thing, and she had a cameraman behind her and so forth. And when he turned to me, she said, "This soldier is from the Korean War." And he had a regular spiel on the Korean War. How, number one, nobody even thinks of it anymore. It's a forgotten war, and we lost 35,000 men in that war, and shook hands. And then I got up, and the next one got in, and he does that every Saturday. That he can get out there, he goes and he greets the men coming in and the women from all over the country on this type of thing. We went to, same as you did, the World War II Memorial. And we went in, and they took us around, and then they sat us down, and this couple came out, and he was wearing a zoot suit. Who remembers a zoot suit? Huh? He was, and she had some kind of a tight gown on, and they were dancing, jitterbugging and everything. And then they'd come and take somebody up and say, "Come on, you come and dance too." And so we had a great time just sitting there in that memorial. I guess it was giving us a break, you know. In the Korean one, I've been there before, and I know that the sculptor designed the face of each soldier to show the feelings of being out there. And the one you want to really look at if you go is the point man. Anyone knows anything about infantry on a patrol, there's a point man, and he's selected, and he's out in front of everybody. And he's the first one that makes contact usually. And of course, he's got the scariest face you ever saw, because what am I doing out here, you know? And the black man carries a BAR, which is a real heavy weapon, and I looked at him. The Native American is at the back of the whole squad. He's behind them, and he's looking backwards. He's the rear guard of the group. And every ethnic in the United States is represented there. There's Oriental face, and every part of the service. There was there's 2 Marines. One was carrying a tripod for a machine gun, and then there was a medic who, I was a medic, so I was interested in seeing him. And he's the only one that doesn't carry a weapon. They all wear ponchos, which makes everybody anonymous, because the only way you can tell the officers from the men is the officer had a handy-talkie, and he was an airman, and he's looking up, so he's calling in air support, or he's looking for it. When we left and got on we had bag lunches. You were lucky, you got a dinner. We got bag lunches. But that was all right. You could say that I want a chicken or I want a fish or something, and they had all these bags all waiting for you. And when we left, they gave us the mail call.
They did.
And they opened my envelope, and most of the letters were written by kids, and they put their name and their grade, you know, 7th grade, 8th grade, and several of them from Avon, all from Connecticut. The other thing that was in there that was very interesting, from Middletown, there was a Dunkin' Donuts card. And found out later when I got home and checked, it had $10 in it.
Oh.
And there was a label on it. It was from the teachers in the school system. And I thought that was really great. Matter of fact, I still carry the card, and I just keep filling it up when I use it and everything. But coming back to Bradley, we had the big crowd like you had. We had a band, and we had a fife and drum of Revolutionary War costumes. And they marched in, they put on a show, they turned around, flag in front, they marched out, they formed us behind them, and we went out like a parade. And that's where everybody was standing there, shaking hands with you. It was the best reception you ever got, the one I ever got. I got out of the service, you just came home, you took off your uniform, and you looked for a job. I mean, there was no, no celebrations and things like that. We went to see the Air Force one, which I had never seen before. It is phenomenal. They've got 3, what do they look like? 3 huge poles that go like this and spread out like 3 airplanes taking off and going in the other direction. It's down near,
Quantico.
well, it's near Quantico, right? But it's also near the Pentagon, not too far from the Pentagon. And when we were going to the Pentagon, the bus driver who we had was a gentleman who'd been doing this for 25, 30 years. He said, look at the side of the Pentagon and you'll see different colors of granite. And that's where 2011, they went into the building and they had to repair it, and of course they got a different color of granite. So we went by that and we saw it, and what they said was that that plane that come in and hit the Pentagon, come in low, and his path was going into the side of the Pentagon. If that emblem was there, they would have hit it, because that really is now in the path of where that plane came in. But that emblem wasn't there because the Air Force monument hadn't been built before that happened. It was great. If you get a chance, go.
I'd like to make one mention when they were talking about World War II monuments. I've seen a lot of monuments, but no monument ever impressed me as the one, I think it was Vietnam. There's 3 nurses standing there with a young lad dying, and the other nurse is there, but the 3rd nurse, I believe, was a black nurse. She's looking at heaven, she's hollering, stop this, this is a war. When you saw the face of that woman, you could almost feel the hurt that the wars were bringing in there. And I said, that was the only monument that I really ever impressed, that I could feel what she was saying. It's a beautiful thing to go there and see it.
What I'm going to tell you now is related to this weekend, but it's broader than that. First, I'll set the scene. This is not a long oration. Last winter, in mid-December, the Cheshire Veterans Council had an event at Veterans Memorial Plaza where we laid a wreath in memory of veterans at the holidays. That's called Wreaths Across America. People do this all throughout the nation. Well, one man came, whom I knew, Mark Nash, and I was lamenting to him, just buddy to buddy, that the plaza looked rather shabby. It was almost 30 years old. The bricks had begun to crack and parts of them were missing. What I didn't know was that Mark Nash was on the Public Works Committee, Public Building Commission. And he's the type of guy who, if you say you want something done, he'll say, which door do you want me to kick down? He went to work in conjunction with Jordan Watney, Public Works, Jerry Sitko, who's,
Economic development.
Director of Development, I think. These are 3 town officials. And over the following few months, devised a plan to renew Veterans Memorial Plaza in front of Cheshire's Town Hall. It's now been accomplished. And I ask you to take the time to look at what was done, because it's very, very good looking now. The bricks around the base of the monument are all gone, replaced with nice granite tiles. There's better lighting hidden in some very, very low shrubbery around the monument. And of course, the parade this Sunday will stop there, and we'll have a very short ceremony, play taps. The Father Romans from St. Bridget's is the officiant, the clergy person this year. He'll say a prayer, and then the parade will proceed down to the reviewing stand. But across the street, in the center of the green, is the Civil War Monument. That too has been renovated, and the last step in that is to put flagstone walkway all around the base. It should be done by this Saturday when we have our ceremony and place a wreath at the base of the memorial there. So that's the news with regard to Veterans Plaza, the Civil War Monument, but there's still more to come, I hope. Mark and I and a few other people have formed just an informal citizens group to pursue further renovations of the area around Town Hall. There are two monuments there, one honoring World War I Cheshire residents, including those who died in World War I, and the DAR placed a monument in memory of soldiers from Cheshire in the American Revolution. Both of those monuments are practically invisible from the street. Even passers-by walking more slowly don't even know they're there. So what we hope to do is bring those monuments forward from their nearly invisible site close to the town hall and place them in a much more public way around the plaza. So that's the end of my report.